Hey, I give you a great video and you give me a subscription. Seems like a fair trade to me. If you agree, hit the button, and in the meantime, we'll get started. It was one of those sweltering, sticky late July afternoons in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was enjoying lunch at a cozy cafe with my longtime friend, Lisa. We've been in each other's lives for over 2 decades now, having first met during our freshman year of college. At first, our paths crossed mainly through work. We weren't especially close until about 10 years ago, when we both signed up for a graduate program in educational administration. That experience brought us much closer. We leaned on each other throughout the coursework and grew into what I now call a true friendship. I'd go so far as to say she's my best friend, and I'm pretty sure she'd say the same. As we chatted about summer plans and recent getaways, Lisa suddenly paused mid-bite and said, "You will never guess who I bumped into at the grocery store last week." "Oh, come on, Lisa," I groaned. "You know I hate playing guessing games. Just tell me already before you explode. Who was it?" She grinned, clearly relishing the moment. So I was pushing my cart around the corner, totally focused on checking things off my list, and I accidentally rammed into someone else's cart. I looked up to apologize, and there he was. Brace yourself. It was Kevin. "Yes, you're Kevin." I blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope." I had to double-check to be sure, but it was definitely him, she confirmed. "And let me tell you, he looked good. Honestly, I don't think he's aged a bit. What's it been? 15 years since you two split." I laughed, though the knot in my stomach tightened. "Actually, it's been 18. Wow, saying that out loud really makes me feel ancient," Lisa continued. "I only saw him a few times back in the day, Christmas parties, end-of-year events, but I recognized those brown eyes and that smile right away. You probably didn't know this at the time, but the rest of us, especially us single gals, were ridiculously jealous of you. You two looked perfect together. Honestly, Allison, how did you ever let him go?" I gave her a wry smile. "Yeah, not my finest hour." "I still can't believe he's back," she said, shaking her head. "At first I figured he was just in town visiting his parents, but apparently he's here to stay." "What makes you say that?" I asked, suddenly alert. "He mentioned he moved back a few weeks ago. Said he's now the managing partner at his law firm's Charleston branch. Right now, he's fixing up his parents' old house on James Island. They're moving into a retirement community in Mount Pleasant, and he's planning to live by the river." I sat back, processing the wave of information. I haven't heard a word from him since he left for Chicago after the divorce. Most of our mutual friends drifted away too. The last time I saw anything about him was more than a decade ago when someone showed me a photo. He was with his new wife. She was beautiful, and someone told me she was a doctor, though I don't recall the details. I just remember the photo. They looked so happy, and it made me irrationally furious at the time. I eventually redirected the conversation, eager to steer away from the memories now flooding back. We wrapped up lunch, and I headed back to school to finalize class and teacher rosters for the upcoming academic year. It's one of the more tedious parts of being principal, but it comes with the territory. This would be my first year leading Riverview Elementary, and because I hadn't gotten to know the faculty or students very well yet, the process took longer than it normally would. Still, if nothing else, it kept my mind busy and off of Kevin, for a little while at least. By around 5 p.m., I finished up and decided to treat myself on the way home with some chicken chow mein from my favorite Chinese place. I was still living in the modest house Kevin and I had bought shortly after getting married. He couldn't wait to get out of town during the divorce proceedings and wanted nothing to do with the property. In exchange for not fighting the settlement, he signed the house over to me without hesitation. Once home, I tossed my keys onto the kitchen counter, pulled a bottle of wine from the fridge, and grabbed the biggest glass I owned. I didn't need to kid myself. It was going to be a bottle of wine kind of night. With dinner in hand and a full glass of wine, I sank into the couch and flicked on the TV, trying to lose myself in some travel show that required no emotional investment. But despite my efforts, my thoughts kept circling back to Kevin and that chapter of my life that had unraveled so fast. What started as something picture-perfect had spiraled into disaster in a matter of months. I carried a lot of guilt for how it all ended. We were both too young, too reckless, and made decisions we couldn't take back. The relationship just couldn't survive the mistakes we made. Now here he was, back in the same city only miles away. It felt inevitable that I'd run into him eventually, and I could already imagine how uncomfortable that moment would be. Just the thought of facing him and her made me feel small. Even now, after all these years, I remembered how stunning she looked in that photo. Hearing she was a doctor had stung, too. Sure, I hold a doctorate myself, but somehow Ed D doesn't carry the same weight in a room as MD. What on earth would I even say to them when we met again? The moment the television flickered on, my mind wandered back to the day I first met Kevin Middleton. It was during our freshman orientation, right before college officially started. Kevin was this tall, charming, and confident baseball player, and I was a quiet girl, decent-looking, admittedly, and a bit of a tomboy. Somehow, despite our differences, we clicked almost instantly that weekend, forming a deep bond that would carry on for years. We stayed close all through our early college days, but by junior year, something between us began to shift. We both started sensing that maybe our friendship was evolving into something more. Still, we didn't rush into anything. It took a few months before we went on an actual date. Even then, we went on several more dates before things truly deepened. We were both cautious, not wanting to risk ruining what we already had, until we were sure this was more than just friendship. Once we took that leap, Kevin was patient and respectful, never rushing me or pushing boundaries. In fact, at the beginning, I was a little thrown off, almost hurt, that he didn't make any moves. After all, I'd known him since day one on campus and had seen him go home with girls he'd barely met. Kevin had that classic star athlete energy, good looks, brains, charisma. Girls flocked to him. I was the opposite, introverted, lacking experience, and slow to open up. One night at a party, the music was blaring and the dance floor was packed when Kevin leaned in and whispered something in my ear. "Want to head back to my place?" he asked. I didn't say anything. Instead, I reached for his hand and led him out the door. When we got to his apartment, he quickly let us in, locked the door behind us, and, well, that's when things truly began between us. In the days that followed, life moved forward as usual. I was busy getting ready for the new academic year, and for the most part, had managed to push Kevin out of my thoughts. I had convinced myself that the odds of running into him again were practically zero. But fate had other plans. I stepped out of my office to retrieve something from the printer, and as I crossed the room, I froze. Sitting by the receptionist's desk was a man I hadn't seen in years, but I recognized him immediately. Kevin. He looked older, sure, but unmistakably him. What was he doing here? I had never heard anything about him having kids, but his presence at an elementary school suggested otherwise. Maybe he did. Maybe he was here as a parent. My first instinct was to retreat, bolt back into my office and hide until he left. But if his children were students here, he'd eventually learn that I was the principal. There was no avoiding it. I found myself wishing I had taken more time that morning, worn something nicer, maybe put on some makeup. But it was too late for regrets. I crossed the room as quietly as I could, heading for the door to the attendant's office. He hadn't seen me yet. "Kevin," I said. "Wow, it's really you." He turned toward my voice, a look of disbelief spreading across his face. I kept going. "I can't believe this. After all these years, I just walk out of my office and there you are sitting right there." "Allison?" he said, clearly stunned. "I had no idea you worked here. I didn't even know you were still in town." He stood for a second, hesitated, then leaned in for a hug. "It's been forever," he said, holding me for a moment. "You still look amazing, by the way." "Thank you," I replied. "That's kind of you." "So, what are you doing these days?" he asked. "Well, as it turns out, I never left Charleston," I said. "I still live in the same house we used to hang out at. After my divorce, I went back to school, got my master's and my doctorate in education. I've been working as a principal for the past 5 years, but this is my first year here at Riverview." "And you?" I asked, though I already had a guess. "What brings you to an elementary school?" "Don't tell me you have kids." "Actually, yeah." "I do," he said. 3, in fact. We just moved, so I'm here doing what every parent does, getting them enrolled. My mom's watching them today, but I'm sure you'll meet them once school starts. My daughter's in 5th grade and my boys are in 3rd and kindergarten. In that moment, I felt the air tighten around me. The very thing that had driven a wedge between us, my inability to have children, was now standing in front of me in living, breathing form. I could feel frustration rising in my chest. I needed to end this conversation before my emotions got the better of me. "That's wonderful," I said, forcing a smile. "I can't wait to meet them. If they're anything like you, I'm sure they'll be excellent students." "Well," I continued, "I don't want to hold you up. I'm sure you've got paperwork to handle. I'll let you get back to it. I hope to see you and your wife at our open house next month," I added, slipping back into professional mode. "It'll be nice to meet the whole family." "We wouldn't miss it," he said with a smile. "I know the kids are buzzing with excitement about starting at their new school. They're eager to meet the teachers and see what their new classrooms are like. But to be honest, it's just the 3 of us now, me and the kids. My wife passed away last year." "Oh my God, Kevin, I had no idea," I said, stunned. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have assumed anything." My cheeks flushed with shame. "I can only imagine how difficult it's been for you and the kids since she died," I added quietly. "I don't know what that kind of loss feels like, but I know it must be incredibly hard. If there's anything I can do to make the transition easier for the kids, getting used to this town or starting at a new school, please don't hesitate to tell me." "Thanks, Allison." "That means a lot," Kevin replied. "Honestly, that's the biggest reason we moved here. We needed a fresh start, and I figured being closer to family would be good for the kids. Plus, my parents are over the moon to have them around. They spoil them every chance they get. Well, I should let you get back to your day. I've taken up enough of your time, but it was really great seeing you again. It was good to see you too. I'm sure we'll run into each other again soon." That night mirrored the one I had after Lisa first told me Kevin was back in town. I couldn't shake the thoughts of him from my mind, or my dreams. Night after night, I woke up drenched in sweat. Each dream started off warm and nostalgic, full of joyful moments from my past with Kevin. But they all twisted into the same dark conclusion, Kevin walking in on me and Patrick Westbrook. I had worked so hard to bury that memory, to move forward. But his sudden reappearance had stirred up emotions I thought I'd left behind. I believed I had forgiven myself and started over. But it had been much easier when Kevin was completely out of the picture. What I'd done only lasted a couple of months, but it destroyed everything. My marriage, my plans, my future. The next week, as we always did during summer, Lisa and I met up for our Monday lunch. Since we were both teachers, summer was the one time we could meet regularly. Once school was back in session, we were lucky to grab a dinner together maybe once a month. Unlike me, Lisa had a husband and kids waiting at home, so those rare nights usually meant a quick meal and maybe a movie. She always needed to get back early. We chatted about work and her family until I could tell she couldn't hold it in any longer. "So," she said, leaning in slightly, "are you going to tell me what it was like seeing Kevin again after all this time? I still can't believe he has kids. And of all the schools around here, they're going to yours?" "Yeah," I said with a small shrug. "It's surreal. I'm still sorting through how I feel about it. It was wonderful seeing him, and you were right, he still looks incredible. But I don't know how I'll handle seeing him at school on a regular basis. He was polite enough when we talked, but I just can't believe it won't be awkward considering everything that happened. When we divorced, he was distant and cold. That last year together broke something in him, but maybe time has helped heal the worst of it. When I saw him, he almost looked like the Kevin I used to know." "You're probably making it out to be worse than it is," Lisa said. "He's probably moved past all of it by now. If you two were honest with yourselves and took a real look at your relationship back then, I bet the good times would outweigh the bad." Then she hesitated before asking, "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I've always wondered, what really happened between you and Kevin? I didn't know you that well back then, but I'd heard things. There were rumors you had an affair with that math teacher who left not long after your divorce." But once I got to know you, I couldn't believe you'd do something like that. I didn't want to pry, so I just ignored the gossip. I don't mind, I said softly. What you heard was true. I was pregnant the year before. Twice, actually. I lost both babies. After a series of tests, I found out I'd never be able to carry a pregnancy to term. Kevin and I talked, and I decided to have my tubes tied. It felt like the only choice. After that, things shifted between us. We both wanted children so badly, and when that hope was taken away, something cracked in our marriage. I started to drift emotionally, and Kevin threw himself into work. I blamed him for leaving me emotionally stranded when I was hurting most. He was working nearly every day, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I tried to carry on, to fill the void, but nothing worked. And then Patrick came along. He listened. He was kind. And I let myself fall into something I thought would make the pain go away. We used to eat lunch together every day in his classroom. I'd unload all my frustrations while he vented about his wife, saying she treated him like he wasn't good enough, just a lowly teacher she looked down on. Have you ever thought that maybe he was manipulating you the whole time, just trying to get you into bed? Looking back, I can see how badly I was being used. But back then, I was desperate for any kind of attention. He preyed on that vulnerability, pretending to care about my struggles. He cast himself as another neglected soul, mirroring my own feelings of abandonment so I'd feel a sense of kinship with him. It worked. I began to feel closer to him than I did to Kevin. I should have known better, but I was so buried in my own self-loathing I couldn't see it for what it was. He talked me into meeting him at the park every Wednesday after school so we could talk in peace, and I totally fell for it. Allison, I had no idea those rumors were actually true, Lisa said, wide-eyed. I always thought the timing of his resignation and your divorce was just one of those things. We teachers do tend to overanalyze. So now that you've hooked my interest, tell me, how exactly did Kevin find out? At the time, Kevin and I weren't really speaking, so I had no clue that he and Logan made a habit of running in that very park after work. Some strange twist of fate aligned everything perfectly that day. We ended up there at the exact same time. Kevin noticed my car in one of the remote lots. Right next to it, he spotted a vehicle he didn't recognize. Curiosity, or maybe suspicion, got the best of him, and he came to check it out. Like always, Patrick and I were in the back seat. I wasn't thinking clearly. The validation of being desired again blinded me to everything else. Things escalated quickly. Before I knew it, we were already in the middle of it. Then suddenly the car door flew open. Patrick was yanked out violently. When I opened my eyes, Kevin was dragging him across the asphalt by the hair, cursing at us both like a man possessed. He slammed the door shut, jumped into the front seat, fired up the engine, and took off, leaving Patrick half naked and humiliated on the pavement. Kevin drove all the way to the opposite side of the park where Patrick had left his clothes, keys, and wallet. He scooped them all up, tossed them in Patrick's car, and drove off again, without a backward glance. To make things worse, he took my car keys too. The only saving grace was that he left my phone behind. I don't know what I would have done otherwise. By the time I managed to get home, Kevin was gone. His things were packed and he had disappeared. I tried reaching him, his cell, his office, but he ghosted me completely. Nearly a week went by before I saw him again. When I did, it was clear he had no interest in salvaging anything. Holy crap, Lisa said, shaking her head. How is this the first I'm hearing of any of it? Honestly, it's not exactly the kind of story you broadcast. Kevin agreed not to file for divorce on grounds of adultery, as long as I didn't contest anything. I didn't have much of a leg to stand on. He worked at a top-tier law firm with unlimited resources. I was a teacher with a meager salary and no savings to speak of. In the end, he let me keep the house, not that it was worth much at the time, and we split the bank accounts. That was it. I never understood why he was so generous with the house, especially considering it was his parents who'd gifted us the down payment as a wedding present. But I wasn't in any position to argue. He barely spoke a word during the process and left town the moment the papers were signed. Last I heard, he'd taken a position in his firm's Chicago office. If there was any silver lining to the whole ordeal, it was that I got to walk away with a shred of dignity. Lisa looked at me closely. What happened to Patrick after that disaster at the park? He practically vanished. He wouldn't return my calls or acknowledge me at school. Eventually, he did speak to me, just once. He told me Kevin had dropped by his house to return his pants and wallet. That was it. He said he couldn't risk losing his wife, and that meant he couldn't see or speak to me ever again. A few months later, he was gone. I heard his wife got a new job and they relocated to Savannah. Oh my God, Lisa said, clearly rattled. I don't even know what to say. That's insane. But as much as I'd love to hear the rest, I've got to run. I'm late picking up the kids from day camp. She stood and grabbed her bag. You better call me later and tell me how this whole thing ends. I swear next school year is going to be something else. I wouldn't call it interesting, I said quietly. More like a train wreck waiting to happen. That night I sat out on the back porch, a strong margarita in hand, replaying everything in my mind. The lies, the manipulation, the foolish choices. How could I have been so blind? Deep down, I always knew it was wrong. A married woman should place her trust only in her husband. No other man deserves that privilege, and joy, especially the intimate kind, should be reserved for him alone. Then it hit me like a wave. The blame was mine. For so long, I told myself Patrick had manipulated me, slowly breaking down my defenses, luring me into choices I never truly wanted to make. But that was just a convenient story, a comforting lie. In truth, I was the one who opened that door. I confided in him about the cracks in my marriage, invited his sympathy, let him in. I didn't pull away when he leaned in for that first kiss. I didn't walk away when we started meeting at that park, fully aware of where it would lead. Worse still, I didn't just allow it to progress. I craved it. I wanted to feel desired, appreciated, even if it came from the wrong person. I convinced myself I needed it. And it took losing everything to finally understand what I had chased, a hollow imitation of something real. How could I have been so blind? After wallowing in self-pity and drowning my guilt in 3 too many margaritas, I hit my limit. Dragging my drunken self off the couch, I stumbled into bed. But sleep wasn't kind. It didn't come easy. The story of my downfall replayed in my mind like a film I couldn't turn off. The shame was suffocating. And though it felt surreal, I knew every detail was true. How had I let it get this far? Eventually, tears and tequila teamed up and knocked me out. When morning came, I was a wreck. My head pounded, my stomach churned, and just lifting myself into the shower felt like a battle. But I didn't have the luxury of staying in bed. Not today. The school was buzzing with activity all week as we geared up for the start of the new academic year. Thankfully, the chaos kept my mind occupied, and for a few days, I managed to push thoughts of Kevin and my own misery to the sidelines. But Thursday arrived like a storm cloud, open house day, and with it, the strong possibility that he'd be there with his children. Anxiety tied my insides in knots, but I powered through my to-do list and rushed home for a quick rinse before the event. I'm not entirely sure why it mattered, but I wanted to look good for Kevin. Maybe it was the memory of him at the office, so polished in that suit and tie, that made me want to remind him I could still clean up well. I picked out my go-to black dress, spent more time than usual taming my hair and perfecting my makeup. And honestly, the result was stunning. After one last glance in the mirror and a deep breath, I told myself I'd be fine and walked out the door. That evening, the school was alive with movement. Parents and students roamed the halls, met teachers, and checked off their lists for the new school year. As the new principal, I spent most of the time shaking hands, smiling, and making introductions. It wasn't until nearly the end of the night that I saw him. He was chatting with a kindergarten teacher, his hand clasped by a sweet little blonde boy. And in that moment, I saw Kevin in a way I never had before. I had known him as the fiery athlete, the carefree college guy, the devoted partner, and the no-nonsense attorney. But I had never witnessed him as a father. Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. Those children could have been ours. the ones holding his hand, calling him Daddy. I rushed into the nearest restroom to collect myself. After a few quiet sobs and a careful reapplication of mascara, I steeled myself and stepped back into the crowd, whispering, "Just keep it together. This will be over soon." Almost instantly, I spotted them making their way down the hallway. Rather than avoid them, I chose to face it head-on. I walked toward them, determined to be calm and professional. "Hi, Kevin," I said with a polite smile. "Were you able to find everything all right?" "Yeah, we did," he replied. "We've met all the teachers and figured out where everything is, so I think we're set for Monday." I turned my attention to the children. "And these must be your little ones." I bent down slightly and extended my hand to his daughter. "Hi there, I'm Miss Middleton. And you are?" She gave me a firm, grown-up handshake and introduced herself with confidence. The smallest of the three children stepped forward with shy bravado. "I'm Hannah," she announced, tugging at my sleeve. "These are my brothers, Will and that's Michael." "It's wonderful to finally meet you," I told them, bending into a crouch so we were eye to eye while I shook each tiny hand in turn. "I'm so glad you'll be with us this year." "We're going to have a terrific time together," I added, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "And I just know you're going to fall in love with Riverview." Before I could say more, a reedy little voice piped up behind Hannah. "Daddy, she's got our same last name!" I blinked, momentarily wrong-footed, but Kevin didn't miss a beat. "That's right, buddy," he said easily. "No reason you'll ever forget what to call her now, is there?" Will, the middle one, studied me with comically serious eyes. "So, Miss Middleton, are we related?" I was quicker on the uptake this time. "No, sweetheart, we're not family," I said, smiling. "But your dad and I have been good friends for a long, long time. In fact," I went on, "we went to university together. One of these days I'll tell you stories about how young he used to be." I glanced up at Kevin. "If your dad's okay with it, there are fresh muffins and some juice in the cafeteria." "Interested?" Three voices fired back in overlapping harmony. "Please, Daddy. Can we, Dad?" "Please." Kevin surrendered with mock defeat. "Go on then." And off they rocketed, bursting through the cafeteria doors like a miniature stampede. "Well," I said, straightening, "I should let you get back to the other parents, and I need to round up my students." I started to turn away, then hesitated and looked back at him. "I know you've heard this before, but you have three absolutely beautiful kids, Kevin. I'm so happy for you. I only wish I'd had the chance to meet their mother." "Thank you, Allison." "That means a lot," he said, angling toward the cafeteria. Then he paused, pivoted, and called after me. "Allison, hold up a second. Can I ask you something?" I turned back fully. "Sure. What's on your mind?" He scanned the hallway as if making sure we were out of earshot, then drew a breath. "Okay, here goes." "It's genuinely good to see you," he began. "I'll be honest, it feels a little strange, but good all the same. I've been replaying us in my head all week, how we ended, what we left unsaid." He broke off, rubbed the back of his neck, and laughed under his breath. "Ah, hell, Allison. Ever since I ran into you here a few weeks ago, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. If this gets uncomfortable, just say the word and I'll back off," he added quickly. "But seeing you brought everything rushing back. I keep feeling like there's still so much emotional baggage between us, stuff we never unpacked. We never really talked about any of it, and that's on me. So I'm just going to put it all out there." He met my eyes. "Seeing you again stirred something I haven't felt in a very long time. This may sound wild, but I want to ask if you'd ever go on an actual date with me." He held up a finger. "But before I can do that, I owe you the truth about my divorce. There's something I'm pretty sure you don't know. Something I should have told you years back. You deserve that before you answer anything. If you're not interested, say so, and I'll drop it," he said. "Either way, I still want you to hear the whole story. So, could we meet soon? I'd like to explain everything." "Wow," I said, the words slipping out before I could filter it. "That is not what I expected to hear from you." "Since that day at the office," I admitted, "you've been on my mind too. Us. What happened, all of it. I've even dreamed about you. I've rerun those years in my head 1,000 times, I said, surprised at my own honesty. And yes, I am curious, more than curious, about going out with you. But I'll admit I'm a little nervous about this big secret you're carrying. I drew in a breath. All right, let's meet. Tell me what I should have known. After that, I added, we can decide whether a date makes sense. He exhaled, shoulders dropping. Deal. That's good. I wasn't sure how you'd take any of this. So, he said, regrouping, would you be willing to sit down and talk this weekend? I think I can make that work, Mr. Middleton, I teased. Saturday? Perfect, Kevin said. The kids are heading out on a camping trip with my brother's family, so I'm free. How about I pick you up at 9 and we talk over breakfast? 9 o'clock works, I said. You've definitely got me curious. I'd share the address, but I'm sure you still remember how to get to our old place. Talk to you soon. I spent Friday tying up the final odds and ends before classes kicked off on Monday. But Friday night, that was a different story. The hours dragged on, and I couldn't stop running through all the possible reasons Kevin wanted to meet. There were too many possibilities. I'd seen him around town not long after the split, accompanied by that redhead from his office. Maybe he wanted to confess that they'd started seeing each other before the ink on our divorce papers was even dry. Or maybe it was about that meeting he'd had with Patrick and his wife, something I never got the full details on. For all I knew, he might just be planning to tell me he'd already made up his mind to leave me before he even discovered I'd been unfaithful. Eventually, after way too much wine, I crashed on the couch. The next thing I knew, I jolted awake, glanced at my phone, and felt instant dread. 8 hours had passed. It was 8:30. Damn, he was going to be there in half an hour, and I was still in yesterday's work clothes. I took the quickest shower possible, threw on some clothes, and had just managed to finish my makeup when the doorbell rang. One final glance in the mirror for damage control, then I opened the door. Morning, sunshine, he said with a smirk. I haven't decided if it's a good morning yet, I replied. Still not exactly a morning person, as you may recall. I assume you're counting on that to deliver your grand revelation before I'm even fully awake. I grabbed my bag, shut the door behind me, and we started walking down the sidewalk toward his car. Ever since he'd appeared at the school office, I couldn't stop thinking about how everything in his life post-divorce made me feel a pang of resentment. I ended up divorced, unable to have children, and clinging to a few loyal girlfriends and a string of relationships that never made it past the 6-month mark. Kevin, on the other hand, had remarried, this time to a stunning woman, fathered 3 amazing kids, and was thriving in his career. And then, as we reached the driveway, all those feelings were confirmed in full. He was driving a Mercedes SL 550 Roadster convertible. I was already annoyed with him, and I didn't even know what his big news was yet. I had wound up married to Kevin's broke young lawyer, while his second wife scored Kevin's rich and accomplished attorney. He must have sensed what I was thinking, because as we slid into the car, he paused, held the keys out to me and said, "Want to drive?" I think I redefined the phrase "drive it like you stole it." Kevin didn't say a word, just reclined in his seat, as I pushed his sleek little toy to the limits, white-knuckled behind the wheel. At the restaurant we ordered, and I recounted the last 18 years of Allison Middleton's life. Not that it took very long. He shared a bit about his wife and children. The conversation was light, even warm at times. But beneath the surface, I could tell he was uneasy. Finally, once our meals arrived, he set his fork down, adjusted in his chair, and took a breath. "I'm not really sure how to go about this," he began. "So I'll just start from the beginning. Stop me if anything doesn't make sense." He looked down for a moment before continuing. "I guess the right place to begin is after your second miscarriage. Finding out we couldn't have kids. It just shattered everything I'd imagined for our life together. All the dreams I had for us, gone. And I think both of us were just lost. We didn't have the tools or the maturity to process it. So we shut down, each in our own way. You withdrew into yourself. I did too." He paused to collect himself, then kept going. "You seemed so distant, depressed. Nothing I did seemed to reach you. It felt like you'd completely disconnected from me. And I was angry, so angry. I blamed you. In my head, somehow, it was your fault that we couldn't have children. I know now that wasn't fair. But at the time, I was just bitter, angry at everything. And you wouldn't talk to me, not really. Every time I came home, you were on the couch crying and I didn't know what to do. I felt like I couldn't say anything to you because it would just make things worse. He looked at me carefully. I'm not saying those things were objectively true about you, he added. I'm just telling you how it felt back then. I understand, I told him, and I meant it. I think we were both hurting deeply, and we were just kids back then. Neither of us had ever faced anything so heavy, and we coped the only way we knew how. Sadly, we ended up making some serious missteps, and before we could even realize it, things spiraled beyond our control. I began to distance myself from you, but it felt like you were retreating from me too. I only wish we had been able to talk about all of this 18 years ago. I understand, but hold on to that thought while I explain the rest. Because what's coming next is even more difficult. Let me remind you of what you already know. You found me in the car with Patrick. You packed your things, left, and we ended up divorced. But what you didn't know is that while you were involved with Patrick, I was also being unfaithful with Casey Graham, a colleague from my office. I was drowning in pain and desperately wanted to start over. And once I discovered your relationship with Patrick, I used it as leverage to convince you to go through with the divorce without a fight. Oh my God, Kevin. Suddenly everything is making a lot more sense. This explains why you were so unwilling to attend counseling or even think about reconciliation. My anger started bubbling up as I looked at him and asked, Tell me the truth, Kevin. How long were you with Casey before you learned about Patrick? Well, that depends on when you consider it to have truly started. It was a few weeks after your two-ball ligation. I was buried in that massive case at work. It was consuming all of my time. Our relationship was strained and complicated by then, and Casey showed interest in what I was going through. She was willing to listen. It started off innocently, just conversations, and I can't tell you how much I needed that release. Looking back, I know I should have come to you instead, but I didn't. I kept confiding in her, and before I realized it, the boundary was gone. It began with a kiss after we had a few drinks, following a long day of sifting through evidence. I was consumed with guilt and knew I should have ended it right then, but I didn't. A few weeks after that, we crossed a line again, this time at her apartment. That was about 3 weeks before I caught you with Patrick. In that period, I was with her 5 or 6 times. And after we split up, she and I continued seeing each other for another 2 months. Okay, Kevin, I need a second to process this. I had no idea all of this was going on behind the scenes. I think I was so lost in my own despair that I never noticed what you were doing. Now, I can't tell if I'm relieved to finally have the truth or furious that you kept it from me all these years and let me carry the guilt alone. What you were doing with Casey mirrored almost exactly what happened between me and Patrick. But you were more discreet. You didn't get caught. I did. How could I have been so blind? You weren't blind, Allison. You were surviving the best you could, emotionally adrift. And honestly, I wouldn't have found out about Patrick if I hadn't been tipped off. His wife reached out to me a week before. Told me she suspected something but couldn't prove it. So I pulled in a favor from one of our firm's investigators. He followed you a few times after work. He told me you were meeting Patrick at the park every Wednesday. The day I caught you, I got there early, hid behind a tree and watched it all unfold. The moment I saw what was really happening, I ran back to my car and called it off for good. My thoughts were racing as I tried to reconcile what I remembered with the reality Kevin was finally revealing. So tell me, Kevin, after all these years, did it ever cross your mind that I deserved to know the truth? Because it really feels like you're only telling me now to serve some purpose. Like you're afraid I'd find out later from someone else, and it would ruin everything. Honestly, that thought came and went over the years. But I convinced myself it would only reopen old wounds to bring it up again. And in those early years, I was a wreck. I couldn't think beyond my own pain. All I did was bury myself in work and jump from one meaningless relationship to the next, searching for something to fill the emptiness. Everything started to change when I met Suzanne. She made it clear she wouldn't marry me unless we went through serious premarital counseling. That process forced me to confront what happened between us. It taught me how to take responsibility, how to handle a relationship in a healthy way. In fact, it was Suzanne who encouraged me to reach out to you and finally come clean. She believed you had every right to know. I felt ashamed of my actions and convinced myself that keeping the truth from you was somehow the right thing to do. I told myself it would be selfish to upend your entire world just to relieve my own guilt. He paused again, giving me space to respond, but I was still grappling with everything he had said. So he went on. I need to be clear, he continued. I deeply regret cheating on you and playing a part in the collapse of our marriage. I should have told you the truth a long time ago. It wasn't fair to keep you in the dark. I know it might not count for much now, but I need to say it. I'm truly sorry. I just need some time to sort through all this. My thoughts are all over the place, and I'm afraid I'll make things worse if I speak without thinking. If it's all right with you, I think I need to go home. I understand, I replied. I realize this might be the last time we ever talk, he said, his voice heavy. And if that's what you choose, I won't fight it. But you should know, I never stopped loving you. Even during my marriage to Suzanne, my feelings for you never faded. I know it might sound impossible, but I loved you both. Differently, maybe, but equally. I saw how special you were from our freshman year, and I always felt lucky just to have you as a friend. When we finally started dating, I already knew you were the one I wanted to spend my life with. I just didn't know if you felt the same. He sighed, eyes distant. If I could go back and make different choices, I would. But I can't. All I can do now is try to be better and not make the same mistakes again. I only hope you'll find it in your heart to give me another chance. If you do, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. I think if you spend some time with me, you'll see I'm not the same person anymore. And I bet you've grown and changed a lot, too. I didn't have anything else to say, so he quietly paid the check and drove me home. We didn't speak during the drive, and when we arrived at my house, he walked me to the door. What happens next? He asked. I honestly don't know, I admitted. I just need time to think. All right, he nodded. I'll see you around then. I closed the door and watched him leave, uncertain of what the future held. For the next few weeks, we didn't talk or cross paths. My days were filled with studying, and my nights were spent trying to unravel the emotions left behind after our conversation that Saturday morning. I felt everything, confusion, resentment, relief, and anger, sometimes all at once. Eventually, with time and reflection, I came to a decision. It took a few more days to gather the courage, but finally I dialed his office number. Kevin Middleton speaking. How can I help you? Hi, Kevin. It's me, I said. I've thought a lot about everything you said, and I've made up my mind. There was a brief, nervous pause before he replied, Well, are you going to keep me hanging, or are you going to tell me? I've been in a fog since that weekend, I admitted, and I've been hoping you'd call, even though I wasn't ready. First, I'm still angry. You should have told me the truth a long time ago, but I get why you didn't. And second, I don't know if we can fix this, but I do know we owe it to ourselves to try. If we don't, I'll always wonder what could have been. So yes, if you're still open to it, I'd like to take you up on your offer. Let's go out. Oh God, I was so nervous you were going to say no, he breathed out. Yes, I'm definitely still interested. So, Miss Middleton, would you be free for dinner this Saturday? Yes, Mr. Middleton, I replied, smiling. Saturday works. Perfect. I'll pick you up at 6. Nothing fancy, just something casual. Right before we hung up, I added, Wait, Kevin, there's one more thing I need to say. I've come to terms with something recently. I tried blaming my own mistakes on Patrick or even you. But the truth is, I made my own choices. I cheated, and it was no one's fault but mine. I lied to you. I hurt you. And for all of that, I am truly sorry. Maybe we can both work toward forgiveness. I'm sorry for running away right now, but I have to go. I'll see you Saturday. Bye. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on work no matter how hard I tried. My mind was spinning with every possible version of how our date could go, from rekindling things and ending up back in bed together to getting into a fight so intense that we'd never speak again. At least I was familiar with both extremes. Everything in between felt manageable by comparison. Finally, Saturday arrived. Not knowing exactly what casual meant to him, I settled on a simple sundress and flat sandals. When he showed up in shorts, a button-down shirt, and flip-flops, I figured I'd interpreted it right. Conversation flowed easily on the drive into downtown Charleston. He parked near the Battery, and we strolled along East Bay Street until we reached a cozy seafood and oyster bar. "I hope you like this place," he said. "I've been here a few times with my triathlon club." It reminded me of that spot we used to go to in college. "It's lovely," I told him. "You know, I've lived in Charleston for over 2 decades, and I've never been here. But it looks perfect." We shared a lovely dinner that night, filled with laughter and conversation that flowed effortlessly, just like back in our college days. The topics ranged far and wide: my job, the messiness of my personal life, and he was completely open with me when I asked about Suzanne. He described how they had met, what his life in Chicago had been like, and how it all unfolded. We also talked about his kids and Suzanne's battle with cancer. What struck me most was how candid he was about the pain he and the children endured after her passing. As the evening wore on and the clock neared 10, he looked at me with a reluctant smile and said, "I really hate to cut this short, but I've got to get back. I told the babysitter I'd be home by 11, and if we don't head out now, I'll be late." He settled the check, and we made our way to my house. About halfway through the drive, I noticed he'd grown noticeably quiet. "You've been awfully quiet," I said, turning toward him. "Is something on your mind?" He hesitated for a second, then said, "It's not anything bad, but there's something I've been trying to figure out how to say to you before we go any further." "Well," I replied, "you brought it up, so let's hear it." He gave a small nod. "Tonight was wonderful, and I hope you felt the same. Honestly, I'd love to do it again soon. But if this is something we're both interested in continuing, there are a couple of things I need to ask of you. First, I need you to keep this between us, for now. My kids don't know anything about us, and I'd like to be the one to tell them when the time is right. If this relationship becomes more serious, I'll sit them down and explain everything. But until then, I need your word that you won't say anything to them." He paused briefly before continuing, "And the second thing is a little harder to bring up. I'm just not ready for anything physical yet. Since Suzanne, I haven't been with anyone. We were together for 15 years, and we were always faithful to each other. It's going to take time for me to open that part of myself again. I hope you can be patient with me." Neither of us spoke for a while. I gave him time to finish completely before I responded. "Well, that's not so terrible," I said with a smile. "Let's see. First off, I had a great time too, and I'd absolutely love another night like this." I leaned in just a little. "In fact, if you don't ask me out again soon, I might just have to track you down and rough you up a bit. As for your kids, don't worry. I wouldn't dream of saying a word until you're ready. You're right to protect them after everything they've gone through. I totally understand." I gave him a knowing look. "And about the no physical relationship thing, if you remember, we had the same arrangement way back when we first dated. Was it really 25 years ago? It worked then, and I have no doubt it'll work now. Honestly, it says a lot about the love you and Suzanne shared, that even now, a year after she passed, you still honor what you had. That's meaningful and beautiful. So how about we just take this one step at a time, and when the moment's right, we'll both know." He didn't say anything else, just squeezed my hand gently and held it all the way until we reached my place. He walked me to the front door, kissed me softly on the cheek, and said goodnight with a promise to call soon and plan our next outing. He kept his word. That following Tuesday, we made plans again. Over the next few months, we saw each other a couple of times a week. From where I stood, everything felt right. He still seemed cautious, but I understood. Then, one Friday evening, after we got back to my house, he didn't immediately get out of the car. Instead, he held my hand and said, "Wait, there's something I want to talk to you about." My heart skipped a beat. For a second, I feared the worst, that he was about to end things. The silence felt like forever until he finally spoke. "Would you be willing to come by tomorrow afternoon?" I was thinking of grilling burgers and hot dogs with the kids, and maybe talking to them about us. Before I could even get words out, tears had already started streaming down my cheeks. "That would make me happier than anything in the world," I whispered. "But are you sure you're ready?" I took a breath. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but I love you, Kevin Middleton. And I'm willing to wait however long it takes for you to feel certain. He looked at me, eyes soft. I think you've waited long enough. It's time the kids and the rest of the world knew how much I love you. I didn't let him finish. I leaned across the console, cupped his face in both hands, and kissed him deeply, letting my tears mix with the moment. When I pulled away, he looked dazed and said, "Wow, I hope you're just as excited about what I'm going to ask next." He paused for a moment, clearly trying to find the right words. Then finally he said, "I was also wondering if you'd like to take a little trip with me next weekend." During fall break, my folks own a cozy little cabin nestled in the mountains just outside Brevard, North Carolina. They've generously offered to watch the kids so we could have a quiet getaway if you're available. If this means what I think it does, I could be packed and ready to go tonight. But I've waited this long already, so I figure I can hang on just one more week. The next afternoon, right around 4, I pulled up in front of Kevin's house, just like we'd arranged. I recognized the house from our earlier days, back when we were married and his parents still lived there. But it looked completely different now. Kevin had renovated the place top to bottom, giving it a sleek, modern touch. Standing in the expansive family room, I found myself drawn to the massive windows framing the stunning view of Clark Sound. The backyard was meticulously maintained, leading gracefully down to the dock where a boat sat waiting. While I waited, Kevin called the kids down one by one to come meet the surprise Saturday visitor, their school principal. Once they were all gathered on the couch, Kevin gently explained that he and I had known each other for a long time, that he really liked me, and that he hoped I could be his girlfriend, if they were okay with it. The boys seemed thrilled by the idea, but I noticed a flicker of uncertainty in Hannah's eyes. When I asked her if something was bothering her, she quietly asked if I was planning to marry her dad. She was clearly asking from the heart, so I reassured her gently. I told her I wasn't there to replace her mom, but just to be her dad's friend for now, and hopefully get to know her and her brothers a little better. That seemed to ease her mind, but I could tell it would take time for her to fully open up to me. Afterward, we ate dinner out on the patio, and when the sun dipped lower, we headed to the dock for a boat ride on Grandpa's boat before I eventually made my way home. The following week dragged by at a snail's pace. Kevin and I spoke every day, but he was staying late at work to wrap things up ahead of Friday so we could head out the moment school ended. We didn't see each other again until that Friday. That morning, I swung by his house and stashed my bags in his car so he could pick me up straight from school and we wouldn't waste time. I was a little let down when I saw he was taking the Tahoe. I had been secretly hoping we'd take his convertible and enjoy those winding mountain roads with the top down. But given the amount of luggage we had and the fact that the kids needed a ride to school, it made sense. As we piled into the car, I noticed Hannah make a beeline for the front passenger seat next to her dad. Kevin shot me an apologetic look and started to say something to her, but I stopped him with a smile and told him not to worry. I'd ride in the back with the boys for now. Once we got to school and dropped them off, I asked Hannah to stay behind in my office for a few minutes. She didn't look thrilled but didn't argue, and sat quietly on the couch while I escorted the boys to class. When I came back, I sat beside her and said, "Hannah, I wanted to have a moment alone to talk about what's going on between me and your dad. I know this isn't easy for you, and I want you to understand that I get it. Seeing your father with someone other than your mom has to be hard, and I want you to know that I'm not trying to take her place in any way. From what your dad has shared with me, your mom was an incredible woman who loved him, and all of you, very deeply. No matter what happens between him and me, I promise you he will never forget her, and neither should you. You should always treasure the memories you made with her and the moments you shared as a family. I would never want to erase any of that, so maybe for now we could just be friends? Would that be okay?" She gave me a small nod. "Yes, ma'am. I think I can do that. It's just, I miss her a lot, and I'm scared that one day we'll all forget her." "Oh, sweetheart," I said gently. "You'll never forget her, and neither will your dad. In fact, since you're the oldest, it's your special job to help your brothers remember her, too. They were so young when she passed. They'll need you to help them know who she was, how much she loved them." I opened my arms and asked, How about a big hug to seal this new friendship before you head to class? She wrapped her arms around my neck and I nearly cried as she whispered, "Thank you, Miss Middleton. I'm sorry if I was mean to you." As she turned to leave, she looked back and said, "Maybe sometime we could sit together and I can show you pictures of me and my mom. I want to tell you about her." "I'd love that," I said softly. With a small smile, she turned and walked out toward her classroom. The rest of the school day passed without any hiccups, and by the time 4 o'clock rolled around, I was more than ready to slide into the front seat of the Tahoe next to Kevin. True to his word, he arrived right on time and we hit the road. The drive was smooth and uneventful, and by 11 that night, we were pulling into the driveway of the quiet, tucked-away cabin in the mountains. The trip itself wasn't long, just about 5 hours by car, but we broke it up with a lunch stop in Columbia. Kevin also insisted we swing by Cabela's so I could get outfitted with proper hiking boots, gear, and socks. Hiking hadn't even crossed my mind as part of the weekend's plans, but clearly it had been part of Kevin's. I didn't argue. I gave in. We also stopped at a nearby grocery store to grab essentials, mostly coffee and wine. The lodge we arrived at was idyllic. Tucked away in the woods, it had a rustic charm and complete seclusion. No internet, no television. It was exactly what you'd hope for in a quiet getaway with someone who matters. Once we got there, we unloaded the car, arranged the groceries, and settled at the table for a drink to unwind before calling it a night. Kevin seemed to glow in this place. He spoke with a kind of fondness about his memories here with Suzanne and their children. Yet, I could still detect a certain hesitation in him, despite the fact that this retreat had been entirely his idea. Wanting to ease him into the moment, I suggested we sleep in after such a long drive and save the activities for the following day. He didn't hesitate to agree. Being near him just felt easy, like the most natural thing in the world. As I drifted off to sleep beside him, I thought to myself, this feels like home. The next morning, we had breakfast, got dressed, and spent the day hiking through Pisgah National Forest. Kevin had come prepared with maps marking out trails and scenic waterfalls for us to discover. The landscape was breathtaking, and the falls, though sometimes requiring a bit of a trek, were absolutely worth the effort. After spending the day surrounded by towering trees and the soothing sounds of rushing water, we headed back to the lodge for dinner, followed by another evening of closeness and intimacy. By the following morning, my hips and legs were aching from the previous day's hike, so we took it easy. We browsed the local antique shops and small-town boutiques, then wrapped up the day with a leisurely drive around the area, taking in the scenery. On our last morning there, I woke to sunlight slipping through the curtains. The bed beside me was empty. I looked around the cabin, but Kevin was nowhere to be seen. Eventually, I spotted him through the window, sitting alone on the porch swing, tears quietly running down his cheeks. Something about the scene unsettled me a little, so I quickly dressed, jeans and a sweatshirt, and stepped outside to join him. "You look a little down this morning," I said gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" He hesitated before replying. "I guess, if you're sure you want to hear it?" I told him I absolutely did. He took a breath and began. "Since Suzanne passed, I've had this ritual. Whenever I'm stuck or need to make a big decision, or even if I'm just feeling low, I go somewhere alone and talk to her. Saying things out loud helps me make sense of what I'm feeling." He paused, then continued more softly. "Right before she died, we were lying in her bed and she pulled my face close to hers. She asked me to promise that I wouldn't stay alone after she was gone, that I'd find someone to love again, for me and for the kids." I could hear the pain in his voice as he spoke. I tried to change the subject, but she wouldn't let me. She pulled me back and made me promise. And when I looked into her eyes, I could see how deeply she meant it. So I told her I would. His voice broke a little. She was crying when she said thank you. That was the last thing she ever said to me. She fell asleep not long after, and never woke up. He looked out into the trees for a moment before continuing. "This morning I talked to her again. I told her I'd honored my promise. I told her about you, about these past few months, how much the kids love having you in their lives. Even Hannah, even if she tries to act indifferent, He gave a small, sad smile. I guess I was saying goodbye to her one more time. Because if we're going to build something real, me and you, I need to start sharing the things I used to only say to her. That's why I was crying. Not just because I was sad, but because thinking about a future with you and the kids makes me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. I listened quietly, unable to hold back my own tears, letting them fall freely as I sat beside him. I can see how deeply you cared for her, and I understand that stepping forward into a new chapter of life feels daunting right now. But let me share with you the same words I once offered to Hannah when we set off on our journey. Loving me doesn't mean letting go of Suzanne. She was your partner, your confidant for so many years. She gave life to your children and shaped the family you all shared. I would never try to take her place. No one ever could. All I want is to begin a new journey with you, to create something meaningful with you and your kids, starting today. Suzanne will always live in your heart, and she will always be woven into the fabric of your children's lives. She helped shape the people you all are today. Honestly, if anyone should be speaking to her, it's me, just to thank her for raising such incredible children and for loving you so well. The summer after that, we held a quiet ceremony in our backyard right by the water. It was simple, just us, the children, and our parents. But it felt magical in its own way. Now and then I find myself sitting in silence, marveling at how fortunate I am. Infidelity ruins most relationships beyond repair. Yet somehow, after both of us coming from betrayed hearts, we've created something stronger than we ever had before. We still argue, sure. Sometimes we say things we regret. But we always circle back, talk it through, and come out closer than before. What I cherish most is that Kevin and I have learned to offer each other grace. Someone once said that mercy is when you receive compassion and understanding in moments when you truly deserve consequences. To me, that perfectly sums up this second chance we've built together.